Welcome to Living Martial Arts with Master Ray Gale, aka the Dark Master. Living Martial Arts discuss and examines the everyday exercise, philosophy, and lifestyle of the martial arts enthusiast. The host talks about his own training, past and present, and he also interviews many martial artists to discover how they continue to live their own martial arts journey. Tune in for top tips on how to get the best out of your martial art. Or perhaps you're thinking of starting a martial art. This podcast offers you an easy way to dip your toe in. Sign up for the newsletter at livingmartialarts.com and get regular updates and training tips direct to your inbox. Follow the Dark Master on Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at Living Martial Arts.
Hi, and welcome to the Living Martial Arts podcast with me, the Dark Master. And I've got a fantastic guest here who is going to tell us a little bit about her martial arts journey, I hope, and share some other things. So without further ado, Sally, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm excellent. Thank you very much for agreeing to come on the Living Martial Arts podcast. And I'm sure our guests will be excited. And I always think it's nice to have female martial artists, because I've tried to get quite a few, and I've had a few, but they said they'd get back to me, but they haven't yet. So I'm really pleased that you have, and that you've agreed to come on, because I think it's good to get a female perspective on what we do, because I think that's important. So without further ado, I always start with, and it's probably the biggest part of this, really, in a way, is telling us a little bit about your martial arts journey, perhaps how you started, any sort of significant things as you went through. But I'll probably ask you some questions about it. So there we go. So crack on, go for it.
Okay. So I've been doing martial arts since the age of 9. I started out with karate around 1996.
Right.
My mum put me in to karate because I was getting bullied, and she just wanted me to have some confidence and whatnot. I think I stayed in that for a little while, and then the club just closed. Out of nowhere, the club closed, and they didn't even tell us. So for a few weeks we were turning up and there was no one there. So around, I think it was around 1998, we just changed completely into Taekwondo, which wasn't too much of a difference because I was in a hip twist style when I moved in. I joined a GTI Taekwondo club in Worcester under Master Clive Harrison, Grandmaster Clive Harrison now, I think. And from there, it just progressed into taking over all of my evenings. I gave up Girl Guides, I gave up swimming, and I just basically completely and utterly went down the Taekwondo route. I did that under the GTI, I think, for quite some time. I think I left the GTI in around 2010, I think.
Right.
So a large part of my Taekwondo career has been in hip twist.
Yeah.
And I changed to the sine wave around, 2010 time. At that point in time, I joined Ben England's club, which was under Master Wolf Taekwondo Academies. So I had a period of time there, changed to the sine wave, redid my third Dan grading. I think it was at a seminar with Cho Jung-hwa.
Okay.
So that was, I can't even remember what year that was. And then I went for my fourth Dan in 2012 under Master Wolf, having converted to sine wave in, I think it was about 18 months to 2 years. I think I converted to that style of sine wave because, as you know, they're all slightly different.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And in 2012, I opened the Worcester club. So I opened that the week after the 2012 Olympics.
Right, okay.
It was on a whim. I basically got offered a venue to open in because they just matted it out. So I was like, yes, I'll just go for it. Didn't really give it a thought. Somehow managed to time it in the Olympic kind of period. And within a month, we'd outgrown that venue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so then we moved to a local like sports centre for a few years. Around 2014, I took over the Droitwich Club, which I had kind of been involved with probably since 2002, 2003 anyway. So it was natural progression that I ended up taking over that school. So between the team and I, we merged the two clubs together, and in 2016 I formed Worcestershire Martial Arts, and now we are we've affiliated with the ITF, and we are kind of going from strength to strength, and it's really nice to see like the progress of my students. So that's just really the school side and kind of like my journey on that kind of front. On another front, I started teaching when I was around about 14. And I realized then that it was something that I actually really enjoyed doing. I enjoyed coaching. I was quite good at it. It was something that I found that I had a skill set in naturally. So I ended up going off to uni. I did earth and geological sciences, and then ended up in teaching, really random career path there. And I did my teaching degree in martial arts as a subject specialism. So I went and did a PGCE, which is like a post-compulsory setting. So I taught like 16 and over. I taught a lot of different subjects, but obviously Taekwondo was the one that I did my teaching qualification in. So all of my coursework and everything was around, changing the way that I taught Taekwondo, changing the way that I engage with my students, changing how I coach them. And that journey has continued up into my former career, because I actually came out of the education system in January this year to become a full-time Taekwondo instructor.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Yeah. So that was a bold move.
I've been there.
Yeah. So previous to that, I was working in education for a local authority. I worked with adults mostly, and I was basically like forming the qualifications. I was managing the tutors. I was an internal verifier, so I assessed coursework and GCSE work and stuff like that. So off the back of that, I now have my own training centre. So I deliver level 2 coaching sports qualifications as my own business now. So I run those with a subject specialism in martial arts to help instructors get the basics that they need and a qualification if they're maybe joining as a coach. Maybe they've been told by their instructor they've got an ability for it, and it's a formal nationally recognised qualification. But I also work with very experienced coaches and very experienced instructors to improve their coaching practice and mentor them in that way. So I do a lot of coach development now, as it's all kind of come together at the same time. And on top of that, I'm very interested in promoting female martial artists on the AETF Women's Committee. So I do a lot of work around engaging women, a lot of work around like what the barriers to engagement are. On a grassroots level, but also on a coaching level. So I'm going to be doing quite a bit of work around celebrating female coaches, but also how we can get those coaches, involved and empowered, and more women coming through to coaching positions in the future, because it is so important that we are, have that representation, especially, with loads more girls coming through. So, I mean, that's generally kind of like an overview. I do compete still as well, so I don't know how I managed to do all of that around working full time.
No, I don't actually.
Well.
That's pretty good. It reminds me of myself in my early days. Wow.
You do it.
You're. I mean, you said so much there. It's fantastic, and I'll pick some bones out of there. Going right back to the karate, really, because I actually started in karate in the middle 70s, and I found first of all, I found the crossover from karate to taekwondo actually quite difficult, because I'm a little bit geeky, and I love to do everything that I do. I love to do well. So I wanted to do karate really well, but I did it that well that I couldn't get out of it once I got to taekwondo. I got there eventually, but there were lots of changes. But as you say, it was obviously, I started doing hip twists in the 70s and didn't change until 99. So I did a lot of that, through initially through the UKTA, then THB, and so on. Just sort of asking about the transition. I found it particularly difficult because, as I said, I'm quite geeky and I like to do things well. So I sort of prided myself on being really good at hip twist. But how did you find that?
You see, between karate and taekwondo, I didn't really feel like I struggled that much. I don't know if that's from the way that I was coached in the karate. I found that the styles were quite similar, so I didn't really struggle.
Sure.
I did pick up the taekwondo very quickly. And again, I feel like from the transferable skills one to the other, very similar. Even the first couple of forms were really similar. So and I was 9. I actually couldn't tell you even what school it was.
Sure.
I couldn't even tell you. But I didn't find the transition from one to the other very hard. I didn't massively struggle, I don't feel, with the transition from the hip twist to the sine wave either. And again, because I think naturally I kind of move with a flow anyway, because I did dance before. Right. So I didn't feel like the transition was too hard, but I'm a bit like you, whereas I'm kind of like, I want to be the best I can be at it. And I like the technical elements. That's something I've always been really interested in, regardless of what style. I've always really liked the technical elements of it, and, making sure I'm doing it by the book, or, by whatever my instructor said, more so by the book now, because I don't formally have an instructor. I have people that I work really close with. But at the moment I try and go as closely from what they say, but supported by the book, and vice versa. I find the change in style between the hip twist and sine wave was slightly more difficult, but not too much. And now, again, because the sine wave that I was doing previously to join this ITF was slightly different again. I've had to change the style again. And before I went and did the Spanish Europeans, I had to literally change my entire sine wave style again in like 4 months. And I'm still changing it now. Like, there's still a lot that I'm changing, which it wasn't necessarily a focus perhaps in the other style, or, for example, like the fast motion was performed slightly differently, or the continuous motion was performed slightly differently, or, in the hip twist style there wasn't even such a thing as continuous motion. So that was like a new thing for me, coming in.
Very much so,
it's like, it's been really interesting. And the journey that I've had in the last 18 months, the progression I've made in 18 months has been greater in that time than it has been in the last 10 years. So
it's interesting because I was a judge judging you with patterns, and I thought you did you look very natural. I must say, you look really natural doing that.
So-san. I learned So-san off YouTube. So I literally learned that off YouTube, and then kind of tried to link the two up in the book, and then I had a few bits of feedback here and there. But So-san's that's a long pattern.
You did very well on that. I mean, I often say to people that you talk about changing over quickly. When we had General Che come to basically inaugurate Puma and start Puma, he came over, and he started a seminar on the Friday, and on the Sunday, 2 days later. But bearing in mind, I've done hip twists since the 70s. I had to do a grading under him and do my 6th degree under him, which I was thinking, I was going up when I should have gone down, and down when I should have gone backwards when I should have gone forwards. I was all over the place. And I remember somebody that he brought with him actually made a comment, and I really felt like punching this guy because he was quite rude to the thing. I felt like just saying, I've been doing this for 2 days. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't the best upgrading of my life, I would say. But actually, sort of looking back, I was very privileged to say that I graded under the founder of Taekwondo. So
yes, very.
Even though it wasn't a great day, but no, thanks for that. It is interesting because you and some of my students listen to this, and other people won't realise actually how different ITF groups actually perform slightly differently, because we started, say we had General Che, then we went to Master Trijinwa, and that was slightly different, and then I went to a couple of IICs, and that was slightly different. So yeah, it is. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm in say lucky. I'd still love to compete, but I don't compete anymore, and I leave that to other people now, to our coaches to sort out. So it's actually quite nice, really. I just say, you know what, guys, you sort that out, and I'll do what I'm doing. But no, that's great. I mean, there are a few other things as well from what you said, and one of the things that is actually quite interesting, and I say this to people, I did my first instructor's course. I mean, I started teaching, I think it was 1978 or something like that. I was quite young, and my instructor said, "Oh, go over there and teach these people something." So I did. Had no idea, really scared, didn't know what I was doing, and it was only until really about sort of 83, when myself and Master Osborne opened our first school in Bath, that actually I got the confidence to be me. And just explore teaching a little bit. And then I took some courses. But in saying that, the Taekwondo instructors courses then it wasn't about teaching methods. It was about teaching Chonji, Dangun, Dosan, and what was correct. So actually, there wasn't much use to it, to be honest. It wasn't about how you deliver things. And it was only until I did level 2 coaching with a guy from Leeds University called Tony Gummerson. And he was really shocked that we didn't have a children's syllabus. He said, well, so what do you teach the children? He said, well, we teach them the same. Yeah, sorry? Well, they do the same thing. Well, why would they do anything different? Everybody was sort of stunned. This guy was going, are you serious? And then at that time, I remember I started my first kids class and actually started teaching them completely differently, treating them as children, not as little adults. And it totally transformed my school, actually. It was a very big school in the end, and the kids stayed and loved it. So it was good. So, I can totally see where you're coming from with the the teaching principles, and I do the assistant instructors courses now in Puma, and I teach a lot about teaching methods and about how people learn, which was never addressed at all.
It's relatively modern, but not modern, if you get me. I think for martial arts, it's like a new thing,
sure.
But obviously in teaching, it's always been a thing, and I think that understanding that martial arts is very military and it's very learned by rote.
Yes.
And that doesn't encompass all your learners and doesn't encompass all your students, because everyone has their different ways of, and their different maps of the world as well. So everyone is there for a different reason. Yes. Some people might want to get a black belt. Some people might want to get some confidence. Some people might want to learn how to interact with other people. Some people, want to lose weight. Some people want to compete for England. Everyone is there for a different reason. And in that one session, you've got to cover all those bases and cover all their learning styles and learn how they work as people and figure out how you're going to progress them. So actually, even in just like one session, as a teacher or a coach or instructor, or whatever you want to call us, it's quite a big thing to be a coach. It's quite a big responsibility as well. And I think in the old days, with some of the teaching courses that I was on as a Taekwondo instructor, you're correct. It was very much a seminar about how you teach Chonji, or very much a seminar of how you give a warm-up. And actually, in the past, even in some cases, the structure of the session was the complete wrong way around, like static stretching at the start, not at the end. And, that kind of thing, and doing a massive blowout cardio warm up to begin with, and without even actually warming up properly, just going straight into full exercise. Those kind of things have advanced a lot, but it's the issue that I found while trying to coach others is that there is still a barrier there for people that have been teaching a long time.
Yes.
Everyone can continue learning. The biggest barrier I have is really senior, older people who
definitely
don't want to change their ways.
I'm in that group, but I tell you what, I'm really open to. I learn more from my younger instructors than anyone else. But carry on.
As should be.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is one of the main things that I've come across is that.
Yeah.
And it's quite hard because I went into teaching at a very young age. I think when I went into my first employment, I was the youngest teacher they ever took in. I was the youngest manager they ever took in. And, being a girl in this industry as well, you meet some barriers that are quite hard to overcome and quite hard to influence change in.
Yeah, sure.
But I always come back to, but if you have an open mind, anyone can learn. Anyone who is an instructor can learn how to do it better. And can reflect
definitely.
on what they're doing as well. So for me, it's really important that when I'm coaching and mentoring people who are instructors, it's how do I mentor them to have reflective cycles in their delivery, in their planning, and how are they going to progress themselves as well? Because I think when you become an instructor, you forget that you are also a martial artist. You forget that you are also a practitioner and a person who has a passion for this. And sometimes that gets a little bit lost. And then your teaching will stagnate because you've kind of lost you a little bit. And I've done it. I think we've all done it.
Yeah.
And it's like I do really enjoy the teaching, and I really enjoy the mentoring and the development of other people. And I feel like, it'd be good to have more modern approaches during our teaching courses, which is obviously one of the main reasons why I opened up my business doing it, because I was in a very unique position where I had the experience and the knowledge and also did taekwondo and martial arts, so I could kind of merge the two together, and it's a very unique qualification now. So, and it's had very good outcomes so far, and we've put quite a number of people through it, and they've all gone on, and their performance as a teacher has improved, and their retention with students has improved. So I still use very, very educational lingo when I talk about taekwondo students now. I still call them learners. It's very weird.
They are. No, I know what you mean. I mean, my ex-wife was a teacher, actually. She was teaching physics, and I learned a lot from her. She actually designed the course that I teach, and it was very teachery language, and we were talking about learning styles, audio visual and kinesthetic and global learners and all that sort of stuff. And I have to say that during my early part of teaching, I realized that I didn't know enough. So I actually started doing a lot of courses on soft tissue injury, anatomy, physiology, that type of thing. People thought I was bonkers at the time, and because I just felt, this is ridiculous.
It's important.
Well, it is.
Duty of care.
Yeah, exactly. And now people understand it, but at that time, I was going away for 3 days. I was learning about these things, and I also did a certificate, of course, in nutrition and all sorts of things that I did. I'm still very much like that, to be honest. I still love doing courses. I love, the educational side of things. I'm currently doing a course on clinical breathing and all sorts of stuff. So I quite like, I feel that I don't want to stagnate and stand still. And I think, I recognize that a lot of instructors, particularly older instructors, I'm just creeping into my 60s. And I realized that a lot of people my age who started teaching that time think they are the finished article. And unfortunately, I don't think we're ever the finished article.
No, we never are. And
No.
I think it will become more apparent if, in the future, Sport England do get involved in what we do. I mean, at the moment, obviously, the national governing body situation for Taekwondo is a bit, it's not good.
No.
Obviously, there's like 3 national governing bodies for Taekwondo, plus some on the fringes that are not officially recognised.
Sure.
And, the BTC national governing body, they don't encompass all of us that do, ITF style.
No,
and then you've got the 2 WT ones, and they're completely separate. And I think at some point, especially since the Zara Python incident, I do feel that national governing bodies and Sport England are going to be looking more at instructors. And they are going to be looking more at what qualifications we hold. Do we have the minimum standards that are required as part of a national governing body, like, for example, safeguarding, first aid, level 2 coaching, DBS checks, public liability, etc. And I think it's a really important thing for instructors and anyone that's an assistant instructor or anyone that's even remotely thinking about coaching or even enjoy it. Like, there are those, I don't want to say like legal, but they are almost legal kind of requirements for you to be doing this, and it's not something that I think is overly, again, spoken about in our industry. And even like you were saying, to the level that you do need to know about how the body moves, what you're doing to the body, what could damage it. You know, I'm a level 3 personal trainer as well. I've done exactly the same as you. I've made sure that I've gone down all the routes to make sure that I'm not going to damage my students, and I'm safeguarding them. They understand their bodies, that, like, because we've got quite an open culture in our club. Everyone understands what their bodies do. Everyone understands, like, you know, a pregnant woman will have a very different training situation to an adult male, for example. So we're quite open about that. But I don't think that's the culture across the board enough. And I don't know how much influence recent changes or recent events are going to have coming down the line eventually. So it is really important that instructors continue with their professional development. And I think regardless of where you're at in your progression, where you're at in your teaching, if you've been doing it a long time, if you're doing it like 18 months, it's so important to keep on top of that. And I'm very much an advocate for that.
I think that I'm not sure whether, you know, I often say to my people that I want to teach till I'm at least 95, then I'll slow down a little bit. Because I do love it, and I never want to retire. And I'm sure things will change. I think it will be slow. It'll be a very slow change, but it will change because really it has to at some point.
It does have to,
and I think that it brings some good things. It's interesting because, you know, I've been in Taekwondo scenarios, let's say, being taught, and I've thought to myself, oh, that's not very good. Not getting that across very well. Oh, you're doing that in the wrong order. Like you say, you know, start with static stretching, you know, and stuff like that, which I mean, the stretching thing, to be honest, is quite old school now, you know. You know, where we used to, like, you know, line up a bow and then go into a static stretch, you know.
That was very old school.
So, but you still see it. You do. I still see it. But moving on from there, that's fantastic. I mean, I could talk to you literally all day about that type of stuff.
I could talk all day about it as well. It's one of those things that I could literally go on about forever. So, it's close to my heart, and I think it's important. And you know, you're obviously very knowledgeable about it, which is great. So, the other thing that I wanted to ask as well is that sort of I always like to get a, you know, you're obviously very busy, and I like to get a sense of what people, other than martial arts, what they do, or perhaps what they can take from martial arts into other things. Now, people find it quite fascinating, because I always say that learning harmonica and learning guitar, for me, is very much, I can see the parallels with martial arts, how I do my harmonica, my guitar, or anything else that I do. I can see lots and lots of parallels. The first thing I want to ask is that, you know, apart from martial arts, you know, you're passionate about anything else, you know, either music or whatever. So I don't get a lot of time, if I'm honest with you, to have other passions, but one or two things that I'd like doing. So I like doing woodland walks, really random.
Oh, right, yeah.
Mainly because I like the headspace that it brings, and I quite like nature and stuff like that. If I'm not at the dojo, I'll be out doing something like that. And then the other thing I do quite a bit of is painting. So I like painting stuff. So I don't, again, get a lot of time to do it, but I do like acrylic painting. I paint Warhammer with my husband as a hobby. I can't play it, but I do like painting it. I'm trying to think what else I do. At the moment, it's mostly that, if I'm honest with you. I think that basically is the stuff that I can slot in around
Sure, yeah.
The frequency of like competing or squad training or, you know, out teaching or doing seminars or IICs and stuff like that. So like I do tend to do quite a bit of that kind of stuff. It's like my downtime. So, and I really like what you were saying about the guitar though, because I actually use playing the guitar as an analogy with my students. So I always say to them, like, when you learn how to play a guitar, you want to do it the best you can. So what you play sounds amazing. And it's exactly the same in your taekwondo. You've got to dedicate that time to perfecting your performance so that you can show the best that you can do. So you don't take the guitar as a hobby to play it badly, you know?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I always use that as like an analogy. So I do find that quite interesting because some of them can really relate with that because they do musical things in their own time and stuff like that. So I do find I found that quite interesting that you said you did that because it's kind of like a direct parallel, isn't it, really? It's like the same with artwork, you know. The artwork I produce, it's not the best, like it's not, I'm not going to proclaim that I'm a great artist or anything like that, but I do like the discipline that I have around it and the time that I'll dedicate to doing a piece. I've literally just finished one. So I'm doing
wow.
So I do like seascapes and stuff like that. So
Oh, that's really interesting. Well, it is you know, I actually started playing guitar around the time that I started doing taekwondo, and taekwondo was my first passion, and I got, you know, very good at taekwondo, but my guitar suffered. It's the other way around now. And I practice. I still love my taekwondo. I still do it, but I practice guitar every day. I've just finished playing just before this podcast, and I try and if you know, this is what I say to the students. I said, you know, even if you can only give it 5 minutes of quality, just do 5 minutes of quality. And if you can do 6, do 6, 7, 7. Don't do too much because guess what? It becomes a bit of a chore. And I do that with my guitar. And I said to myself, right, okay, I've only got 10 minutes, but I'm going to do this and I'm going to give it, you know, 10 minutes of quality. And my guitar playing has really come on. So it's something that I really, really enjoy and I'm quite passionate about, as well as my taekwondo. I'm lucky enough now, you know, like you, I've been a full-time instructor for a long time, well, since middle 80s. And, you know, I often say to people that I love being a martial arts teacher because it gives me the lifestyle I want. I can train in the mornings, play my guitar, and do all the things that I love to do. You know, I've never been into big houses or big cars, which is just as well because I haven't got one, either of those. I do like motorbikes though, but no, that's great. Sort of moving on again, another thing, but coming back to a little bit about martial arts, but maybe the other side of martial arts or fitness and food. Now, I have a fairly, well, people would see it as quite an extreme diet. I'm very, very meat based. Let's put it that way. So for breakfast this morning, I had 4 eggs. Which people go, what about your cholesterol? But anyway, my which is fine. My thing is that whether first of all, whether you have any sort of food protocols that you follow. I guess you do as a competitor still. Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, I used to eat what I liked, to be honest, was a competitor. I was very light and I could get away with it because I was training quite a lot. But I probably wouldn't eat that. I don't eat that way now. But yeah, whether you have any sort of regimes or you just look after your, you know, that side of it, things.
I kind of just generally look after my overall health. I would say that my husband and I are both very much along the lines of we're very kind of protein and very, I don't know, like veg based. I don't think we have we don't have a massive amount of like processed foods. So we're kind of not fully clean. You know, I have my moments every now and then, as you all do. But I would say that we're relatively clean. I would say very like keto kind of based, more protein heavy for me. Generally because like I do weight train, I do resistance training, and I'm one of those people that really struggles to put muscle on. So I tend to have to really kind of like have the protein and I really don't have a lot of processed foods because it just doesn't do me any good. I have a lung condition called bronchiectasis. I think it's how you say it. And it's like a cystic fibrosis, but it's not cystic. So it kind of gives you all the breathing difficulties that you would think you'd have. It's not as bad as it has been in the past because, fitness, helps it. But I also have like a really bad reaction with sugar. So anything that's like processed, or like if I have a bar of chocolate or anything that's like really over sweet, I will start wheezing quite a lot. So I have really struggled with that lung condition. As I say, at the moment it's relatively under control because actually my diet controls it fairly well and fitness controls it fairly well. But it's one of the main reasons why I don't spar. And I do mostly specialize in the patterns because I cannot predict how my lungs are going to be that day. So so like I tend to find that like my diet directly impacts like obviously my overall fitness, but from a lung condition point of view, it does really heavily impact that. So if I'm having like a naughty period, as I want to call it, but it's not naughty at all, then I tend to find that my lungs will suffer for it. So
I think a couple of things you said there, and I think it's important whether you eat sort of animal based or I was vegetarian for a while as well. I tried that. Didn't work for me personally, but I think whatever you do, eating clean and cutting out processed food is really, really important. So anybody listening to this, any of my students, that I go on to you about it. Eat clean. The other thing that I've realized over the years speaking to different people is that not one diet fits all. I think you have to find out what works for you.
And how your body reacts to certain things. Because I have students that if they have a lot of sugar, they struggle not with their lungs, but they struggle with other issues, in their bodies and stuff like that. So you always kind of find what suits you, as a diet. And I don't particularly agree with fad dieting. I don't particularly agree with some of the advice that's out there at all. And I always advise people to enjoy their lives as well.
You have to,
But also remember that what you put in directly, has a consequence. It could be that you don't want to gain weight and you're not exercising and you're eating too much of the wrong things. It could be that you're gaining weight and exercising and gaining weight, but you're gaining muscle. So it's I always find the nutrition stuff really interesting. I don't like overly. The one thing I really don't like advising on is cutting weight. I hate.
Yeah, me too.
I hate advising cutting weight for competitions and stuff like that.
Particularly youngsters.
So I'm very much in the sense that my youngsters fight at the weight they are. I'm very much in the sense that I will fight, around the weight I sit naturally. If that means I have to maybe cut a kilo, then fair enough. But if I'm cutting like 5, then that's not going to happen, And I do hate when my adult students say they want to cut to get into a category or whatever. I really don't like advising it, especially when it means they're cutting muscle. I hate that. It's just one of those unfortunate things because there are ways around, being the lighter end of your category. There are training methods for you to progress into get around a heavier person. I do feel like people cut for the wrong reasons sometimes. So, and especially with the youngsters, like we don't allow them to cut because, to be quite frank, the amount of teenagers that I have in my club that have got eating disorders, who are recovering from eating disorders, I just don't. And also the body confidence issues I've had in the past, being a competitor or just generally in the past through bullying at school, like I just wouldn't want to put any of my teenagers through a cut, like quite simply. So well, good on you, because I think that's I think that's a really sensible approach. Youngsters, particularly boys around the age of 14, girls, perhaps a tiny bit younger than that, where they're maturing, and actually the natural process is to put on muscle, whatever. They're trying to stop that. I think is quite dangerous. And we're very much the type of school of be strong, not skinny.
And I think that's a good approach to take. You mentioned actually before about your perhaps breathing difficulties and so on. I mentioned to you that I do. I'm training to do some clinical breathing as whatever. Have you ever done anything like that, or do you practice any of those things?
I have asked for referral to clinics or to specialists to help with my breathing. But obviously the way things are at the moment, that's not going to happen for quite some time. I know some breathing exercises, but generally, no, I haven't actually been able to get help with that. And I have asked, and that's the other thing, like, I think for me, it was so long in me actually coming to ask for help with it. Because I always just considered it to be really bad asthma. And it was only after, I think it was like 3 chest infections in a row, and I was still training and I was still teaching and competing during that time as well. And I ended up at the hospital with breathing difficulties, and they had to put me on a machine to, apparently they hadn't used it since like 1997. That's how rare this one was or something. To diagnose this, and basically, like, my lungs have also hyperinflated so much that they won't kind of go back down again. So I have actually got issues with like my ribs as well from that. So like my ribs will kind of shift a bit as well. So that can be quite painful, especially then when I get kicked in them at, when I'm sparring and whatnot. But no, I haven't ever done breathing exercises, and I was actually going to join it's like a group for people who have COPD. And it's like a singing group. I was going to join a singing group because I can sing, but like I don't very often, and that was apparently a good way of helping with it. But I just, like, lockdown just kind of took everything off the table. So
it's tough. Right, after this, I'll once we get off audio, I'll give you some of the bits and pieces that
sure, thank you,
that may be of interest to you. But that's cool. Well, listen, we're coming towards the end of the podcast, and there's a couple of things here really. One thing I want to say is that if you've got anything or any information that you'd like to share and like to put in the show notes, please feel free to do that. If if you've got any social media contacts that you'd like people to catch up with you on, or any of the your teaching things, we can put that in as well. And if you want to mention some now, you can. The other thing which I like to say to all my podcast members, I'd love to chat to you again at some point. Catch up and find out how you're doing, and how your classes are doing, how your teaching is going on. So yes, that's what I like. But most of all, I just want to say thank you. Really, it's been fantastic. And any other ladies martial artists out there, we need more ladies. We do, especially since we want to do, especially from my point of view, from the women's committee for AETF, we want to have your stories. We want to share about you. We don't care if you're like an international competitor. We don't care if you're coaching. We want to talk to the women, and we want to have exposure for the women who are at grassroots level. If you're a white belt, we want to learn how you're juggling being a mom or being a career woman, or how did you get into taekwondo? How are you finding taekwondo? We want to know your stories, and we want to be able to publicize them, because we want to empower more women to come in and do martial arts and progress up, not just to a black belt. We want to progress you up to master level. We want to see women teaching IICs. We want to see women teaching seminars. We want this, and without your stories, we're not going to move that forward. So talk to us, talk to Master Anik and I on the women's committee. We want to hear from you, and we want to hear more podcasts about women. We want to see more YouTubes about women. I know that the AETF are going to put one up soon about women on their YouTube. So get involved with it, talk. We want to hear you. Excellent. Well, and if you know of any more martial artists, male, female, particularly, that I can chat to, send them my way. I'd love to chat more with people, and just give all the people listening to this just a bit of inspiration that actually, we're normal people. We've just got a passion for what we do, and hopefully that it'll build their passion as well. And
that's it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. Really, really appreciate it. And hang on there once we finish. So Living Martial Arts Podcast fans, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed that as much as I've enjoyed that. I'd like to say thank you to Sally. And I'm sure, if you want to get in touch with Sally either through about her classes or any of the teaching that she does, maybe take advantage of her obvious knowledge, we'll put that in the show notes. Okay, thank you very much and goodbye. Thank you.